Hello, I am Talking Owl, the storyteller. Today's story is The Case of the Missing Manuscript. Detective Luke Donovan wasn't your typical detective. He was tall, with a mop of dark hair that never quite stayed put and a smirk that rarely left his face. Known for solving oddball cases in his quirky style, he liked to say he was only serious when it came to coffee, his cat Marvin, and his job, though not necessarily in that order. This Tuesday morning, however, he was feeling restless. That changed when his office door flew open, and in walked Emily Street. James. She was polished, elegant, and not the type you'd expect to find in Luke's cluttered office above a sandwich shop. "Detective Donovan?" she asked, eyeing the towering stacks of books, papers, and, for some reason, an abandoned fish tank by the window. "Guilty," Luke replied, tipping an imaginary hat. "Please, have a seat. Just, don't sit on Marvin." The gray cat blinked up from the chair Emily had her eye on, clearly irritated at the prospect of being disturbed. Emily picked the cleaner-looking seat across from Luke's desk. "So," Luke began, leaning back in his chair with an air of exaggerated casualness, "what can I do for you, Ms. Street?" "James." "Emily Street." "James," she said, extending a gloved hand, which Luke shook a bit awkwardly. "I'm an editor at Brighton Press. We're a publishing house." "Ah, books," Luke exclaimed. "Love them. Full of words, usually. Very readable." Emily paused, apparently weighing how to best explain herself to this scruffy detective. "Yes, well, I'm here because one of our manuscripts is missing." "Isn't that your job? As an editor, I mean. To have manuscripts." "It was stolen," Emily corrected, her voice taking on a serious tone. "And it's not just any manuscript. It's the latest work by Ian Temple." Luke raised an eyebrow. Ian Temple was a best-selling author with a cult following, known for his dark humor and intricate plots. His latest book, still unpublished, had been hotly anticipated. Luke leaned forward, intrigued. "All right, so who would want to steal it?" "That's just it," Emily said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "Everyone." Luke started his investigation with the Brighton Press office downtown. The place had all the charm of a dentist's waiting room, with gray walls, squeaky vinyl chairs, and a bored receptionist who barely glanced at him as he walked in. Emily led him to the office of Julian Barker, Brighton Press's head editor and a Temple fanatic. Julian was as wiry as a coat hanger, with a pencil behind his ear and an ever-present cup of herbal tea. He looked like the kind of person who read existential poetry for fun. "Julian," Emily began, "this is Detective Donovan." Julian sized Luke up skeptically. "Are you really a detective?" he asked. "I like to think so," Luke said, folding his arms. "So, tell me about this missing manuscript." Julian sighed dramatically. "It was stolen from my office last night. The manuscript was in a flash drive labeled, Final Draft. We were supposed to send it to print next week." He clasped his hands in distress. "It's a disaster. If it leaks, we're ruined." "Who has access to this office?" Luke asked. "Well, there's me, Emily, and maybe 8 others. Our marketing guy, an intern, Temple's agent, everyone here, really." Luke muttered, scratching his chin. "Do you think anyone around here might have a reason to swipe it?" Julian's eyes darted to Emily. "Well, there's one person who's been difficult." "Oh," Luke said, pouncing on the hint. "Who?" Julian hesitated. "Darren. He's one of our junior editors. A Temple superfan, to put it mildly." "A Temple superfan?" Luke asked, intrigued. "The type who'd sneak into your office after hours just to read it? Or steal it and leak it online to prove how exclusive his knowledge of Temple's work is?" Julian muttered, rolling his eyes. Emily nodded. "Darren's intense. He goes to Temple's book signings, he's part of fan forums, he collects every first edition, he even has one of Temple's old notebooks, somehow." "Great," Luke said, straightening up. "Where can I find him?" Darren turned out to be at a nearby cafe, hunched over a laptop with a focused intensity usually reserved for chess players and mad scientists. Luke slid into the seat across from him. "You Darren?" Luke asked, extending a hand. Darren looked up, wide-eyed and panicked, as if he'd just been accused of cheating on a test. I might be," he stammered. "I'm Detective Donovan," Luke said with a smile that was almost warm. "I hear you're a Temple fan." Darren visibly relaxed. "Oh, yes, I love his work. There's just no one like him," he said, leaning forward eagerly. "His plots are so intricate, his themes so dark, yet funny. It's brilliant." "Right," But what if you had his latest manuscript? Luke asked, studying Darren closely. Darren's face dropped. Are you accusing me of something? Just checking. It's quite the exclusive item. Worth a lot to fans like you, right? Darren shook his head, looking horrified. I would never steal from Temple. I mean, yes, I'd do a lot to read his work, but not that. That would ruin the magic. Luke narrowed his eyes, then shrugged. All right, but if you think of anything, you know where to find me. As he left, Luke couldn't shake the feeling that Darren might be hiding something. But he also couldn't see him risking his entire reputation among Temple fans just to steal the manuscript. There had to be someone else involved. Back at Brighton Press, Luke took a closer look at the office itself. A scuff mark by Julian's window caught his eye. He followed it, crouching down to find a small fragment of fabric caught on the edge of the sill, rich burgundy. He pocketed it thoughtfully. Julian, Luke said, glancing up as the editor returned. Is there anyone here who dresses in, let's say, maroon? Julian's eyes widened. Are you implying? Just then, a shrill voice interrupted. Julian. A woman in a maroon pantsuit strode in, her face tense with worry. I just heard about the manuscript. Is it true? Luke straightened. And you are? The woman barely glanced his way. Oh, sorry, I'm Valerie, Ian Temple's agent. Valerie, Detective Donovan, Julian muttered, eyeing Luke meaningfully. Luke didn't miss the shift in Julian's expression. Ms. Valerie, did you happen to be in this office last night? Valerie hesitated. I might have come by. I needed to make sure everything was in order before the release. And did you go near Julian's desk? Only for a moment. I was just checking if everything was organized for Ian's signing next month. But I didn't see anything out of place. Luke glanced at Julian, who was furrowing his brow. I had the manuscript on my desk yesterday. But it was gone by this morning, Julian said, a note of accusation creeping into his voice. Valerie laughed nervously. Oh, please, I wouldn't touch it. I know better than to mess with Ian's work. Emily, who had been watching quietly, suddenly interjected. But Valerie, didn't you say that Temple was thinking of switching agents if the book didn't perform well? Valerie paled. What? No. I mean, he might have hinted. No, that's ridiculous. I wouldn't jeopardize my career. Luke nodded thoughtfully. Well, it seems to me that you had access, opportunity, and potentially motive. And a rather fashionable maroon suit. Valerie stared daggers at him, but Luke merely gave her a shrug and a sly grin. Back in his office that evening, Luke sipped his coffee, waiting. He'd left a little message with Valerie, suggesting they meet to discuss this more privately. As he'd guessed, she couldn't resist. The knock came at 8 p.m. Valerie entered, looking tense. All right, what's this about? Luke leaned back. Simple. I know you took the manuscript. Now, I'd suggest handing it over. Valerie scoffed. You can't prove anything. Actually, I can, Luke said, pulling a USB drive from his desk drawer. Turns out, Darren saw you slipping it into your purse last night. He took the liberty of downloading a backup before you noticed. Thought he'd get a sneak peek. Valerie's face fell. Fine, she muttered, pulling a flash drive from her handbag and throwing it on Luke's desk. This stays between us, right? Luke raised his eyebrows. Oh, I'll keep it quiet, though Julian might have a few words for you. As Valerie stormed out, Luke leaned back, satisfied. The case was closed, and he had a brand new story to tell Marvin, who meowed in apparent approval from his perch by the window. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to press the bell icon.